So first of all, congratulations on taking what most people just think about and you guys putting into action and more importantly, completing it. So just to get one book out, but your second book out is an incredible achievement. So congratulations to both of you, because I know the amount of work that you have put into it over the last couple of years. So that's awesome stuff. Thrilled for you guys. I'm going to show both books, both your first edition
Yay.
and your second edition.
All right. Love it.
And I will say there's quite a contrast. They're kind of two completely different books, obviously in the same industry. First book was really based on aimed at bar management, and it was a really good book for that. This book is really is a collection of stories where you guys have sort of weaved in best practices and what you feel is what makes some of the top operators globally. Right? This is not just a local US book or Miami or Atlanta. This is from operators all over the world, which adds to the the collective experience from all of these operators, and it kind of goes, and obviously, as we'll dive into, the common thread that's kind of woven between all of these people. And one thing before we kind of really dive into it is it's not to me it's sort of common amongst all business, right? It's not just hospitality, but the skill sets, the DNA is sort of applicable to anybody who kind of reaches the top of their game in business in general. So, and it'll be interesting for you guys, as I'll ask you later about what maybe is more specific to hospitality that you've found out of these skill sets. So, but first, before we get into all of that, I've known you guys for many years. Dave Domzalski, worked with Dave many years ago in Washington, D.C. as we worked on servicing local clients in the Washington, D.C. area. And then Dave branched out into his own, opening up a Miami Barmetrix office, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago at this stage. Yep. And Dave Nitzel, I go back maybe another 7 or 8 years. It's hard to know because you have to take into account COVID, because that sort of like takes out a couple of years that you forget about.
So, we still know each other.
We still, yeah. So why don't you guys just start off and just to show, I guess, your background and your history, because you both have very different backgrounds. So it'd be just interesting to kind of talk about how you got to where you are now.
Cool. So I came to this industry in a circuitous route. I started off in physics engineering when I got out of college, and then got bored with that after 3 years. I was an acoustical design engineer. Moved on to restaurants, learned that, and I wanted to own a restaurant like everybody out there. Learned that I found out that was a little, takes a certain bit of a special type of awesome insanity that I don't think I have. You and Sean came into the States, and then I came over to you guys and grew DC for you guys, and then we ended up selling that. As you know, you brought me then into the global leadership of the company, training up the new franchisees that were coming in and creating SOPs, training programs and stuff that we hadn't had at that point. And eventually decided, it was actually Danny Bro, your current partner in crime, who asked me one day, he's like, man, I'll tell you what, Dave, I love making owner money. I never want to make employee money again. I was working for you, and I was like, God, I'd like to make owner money. So when it was time for me to move on from that job, I thought, I'll buy my own territory. We investigated multiple territories across the US and decided that Miami was the spot to be. My first year in, Nitzel calls me up, and so 3 years, it took us 3 years to do the research, to write, to rewrite, to edit, to re-edit. It was an amazing journey. Met some incredible people online, some I know in person, but the experience of doing this has been honestly really enriching and awesome. To like read that final product has been incredible. And of course, working with over there is phenomenal. It's something I've never experienced before, to collaborate with somebody like that.
Awesome. Yeah. You've been on quite a journey to go from physics background to engineering and to hospitality, but it's not unusual. A lot of people do find themselves in the hospitality space kind of through strange paths, I think. And Dave Nitzel, your path is probably even more stranger, really. I mean,
I guess it could be. I've never really thought it out. I didn't career path myself to this point. My background does come from Fortune 500 America. I was on CEO teams of some of the biggest companies in America, not hospitality companies. And I never aspired to be the CEO of a massive organization. I mean, I'd do the work if it was there to be had, but I wasn't going to fight for that. And as it happened, I was a political assassination of a war I didn't know I was fighting. So I spun out of one of those organizations, and I really enjoy, I've never thought of myself as a learner, but as it turns out, I do really enjoy learning and experiencing new things. And I do know about supply chain and inventory. Logistics is my background. And when the opportunity to join Barmetrix availed itself, I took it. It sounded really interesting. I felt like I had a certain skill set that could apply to this industry. I wasn't sure if the industry would accept me. That was a big concern when I very first started. Would anyone listen to me? But what I came to appreciate very quickly, and sort of the impetus for some of the books, is coming out of the corporate background that I come from. I see the amount of support people get within an organization, and all the specificity that goes into very specific career responsibilities. And when I got into hospitality and looked at the independent bar and restaurant owner, and the amount of work they have to do is incredible. The responsibility they take on, the amount of hats they have to wear, the amount of expertise they have to wield in hopes that they're right about so many things. The odds of being good at that many things is so slim, which means that you're hoping for the best on a lot of stuff. You're running on a lot of intuition. And I started connecting dots to what the failure rates look like, which are unreasonably high, especially in the first 3 years. People wrap up tons of hopes and dreams and a lot of savings and a lot of money into making bars and restaurants work. I'm naturally suited to coach. I do love to coach. I can sit at a bar and talk business with somebody. It doesn't matter what they do for hours, and I'm a pig slop doing that. I just enjoy it. So, writing the books for me and coaching people doesn't feel like work to me. It's fuel for me. I love it. I'm a business nerd. If you check my LinkedIn profile, it validates I am a business nerd. That's what one of my titles is. So for me, I love this journey. You mentioned about the international nature of the book. I was talking to somebody, I can't remember if it was someone in India or Australia. It was one of the two. And I was asking them, would our books sell internationally and that sort of thing. And something they said was, look, all of our business books are American books, written from an American perspective. That's what the majority of business books are. And I don't know why, but that made me feel bad. Like, it resonated with me that, man, that must kind of suck. So I think that conversation was the beginning of, hey, I really want to have some kind of global representation here. It is what it means to be hospitable.
How do you describe the book to somebody who has never read it before, who knows nothing about it?
Well, it's sort of an accumulation of short stories. So we wanted to find Jim Collins' Good to Great is a book that sort of defined my career and a book that I leaned on, and an inspiration for me on this book. In Jim's book, he was able to take information from public traded companies. So that information is all very public. And he was able to take that information and find out not just who is the best, but who is the best of the best of the best. And then what do they do different than anyone else? And that book is a legendary business book. So that was the inspiration for Hospitality DNA, but these aren't publicly traded companies. So what are we going to work off of? Well, what do I know? And what's public information? Public information is these award winners and that sort of stuff that you can research and go, okay, who's out there doing stuff and then getting recognized by their peers and others. And there are some folks out there that might say, hey, look, being an award winner doesn't necessarily mean X, Y, or Z. And that's true. But we needed a marker of some kind. And people that are constantly winning awards over and over and over again are doing something right. So we felt pretty good about that. So that's why we targeted the idea of an award winner. Plus, so much is talked about on the negative side, the failure rates. We wanted to talk about the success rates. There's a lot of people out there that are telling you what not to do and what's wrong. We wanted to take an approach of telling you what to do, what is right. So we interviewed those folks from all over the world. And then what we did was we wanted to figure out what's their superpower, which we call building blocks in the book. So we stick to this nerdy, sciencey type theme throughout the book. And we would have to hear their career arc to really get to it. If I said to you, Ray, what makes you so special? You're not really going to give me a straight answer to that question, right? Because it's an off-putting question, right? Yeah. So what we have to do is we have to start at the beginning and say, tell me your journey. How did you get here? How did you become award-winning? And most people will start off at the beginning, and they give you this amazing journey. And then we have to find, Dave and I would have to extract, what's the real key to their success? And people often had more than one. So that's the research. We had to find what did we think is that key? And then how do we create a teachable moment out of whatever that is? And then how do we string it all together and connect all these incredible building blocks? Because what makes you special, Ray, and what makes Dave special, and what makes me adequate, they're all different. They're all three different things. What we want to be able to do is string that together so we can hand it to someone and say, here it is. We have to get down to the core of what it means to have hospitality DNA. And when we started, we didn't have a destination in mind. We started writing this book with no idea where it was going to take us. We just knew we wanted to do these interviews. We wanted to learn and then figure out what the interviews told us, which is why it took us 3 years. And it was not easy, but I think Dave and I are really excited about where we ended up.
Right. And so there's a lot of people you interview there. Was there a far bigger set of people that couldn't make it into the book for various reasons, or?
Yeah, there were quite a few. Actually, to add on to what Nitzel was saying earlier as well about our criteria, we had to have some sort of leveling field. The other thing we were doing is we were asking people, who's the next person we should talk to, right? We had a list of people we know who are at the top of their game, getting out there and winning awards. And there was a lot of intersection where people would say the same name. And then we would say, hey, what do you think about this person? This other guy told me about it. This other gal told me about. And they'd say, oh, yeah, no, definitely, you got to. So there's a peer-to-peer connection of them agreeing that they deserve these awards, right? These aren't these aren't like participation trophies. But at the end, we had to have a cutoff, right?
Right.
It's probably important to know too, we cast a wide net and we chased some people really hard. There are some people that aren't in this book that I desperately wanted in the book. And some people wanted to be paid to be in the book, and that just wasn't in the cards. There's not enough money in book writing for a couple guys like Dave and I to pay serious money to interview somebody. So it's important to note that the folks that are in the book, they all volunteered their time and knowledge. And I just find that I make mention of that in the intro. It's absolutely incredible. The people that took the time to do this and sort of open up about what the secrets to their success are, so other people doing the same thing in the same industry can benefit from their knowledge. Can't say enough about the importance and gratitude that we have for that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's the process of, there's the book and there's the contents of the book and there's the lessons from the book. But just as interesting for most people, I think, is just the process of writing a book, right? For people who are not book writers, who have thought about it. So take me a little bit, like, what do you guys have written 2 books. What has been the big difference between this book and the first book?
So a massive difference between the 2 books right off the bat is one was easy, predictable, planned. The other one was amorphous, being figured out and processed. I could say, if somebody was thinking of writing a book, figure out what you want to write about and start. That's literally just start writing something, and it'll if it needs to evolve, it'll evolve. If it doesn't, it won't.
I haven't read both books. I would expect this book, because it's of the way it's written and the stories, and having to be a lot more creative on how those stories are kind of all connecting to each other and connecting to the points. Because it's not just a book about telling stories about these award winners, but you are bringing it back to the concept of the HELIX and the hospitality DNA and the shared experiences. So talk to me a little bit about the idea of the HELIX. What is the HELIX, and how does that connect the whole book together?
So the HELIX, look, that's the eureka moment. That's the, we're in search of something, and what we were in search of, as it turned out, was the HELIX. What are the common threads? Because at the end of the book isn't just a collection of stories. That's not the idea. That, to be honest, that's moderately interesting. You have to be able to take the stories and build a lesson around them. Now it's more interesting. And then we had to string all those lessons together so we had something to teach out. And the HELIX were the 5 reoccurring themes that we kept finding in every, or more often than not, in each person's story. And it wasn't immediately obvious. So one of them, for example, the HELIX is an acronym, HELIX, and the L is lifetime experience, which you may say on the surface, well, that's not all that original of an idea. And you say, yeah, that's fair enough. But if I ask someone at the outset, before you read the book, write the 5 things that you think are the most integral to success in the hospitality industry, I don't think most people get these 5. So that makes it super interesting, in my opinion. I mean, even for me, we were learning. We didn't say, all right, here's what we think, and let's reverse engineer it into our idea. We had no idea. If you had asked me what the 5 were, I might have had maybe 1 or 2, maybe. And I can't promise you that that's even right. So, for example, lifetime experience. Well, all but really one person, when they would tell us their story, they didn't say, hey, like me, I made the jump into hospitality when I was 43. That's not the story. Not. The story begins, I was washing dishes at 15. The story is, I had to get a summer job. The story is, I had to work because my family didn't have money. Whatever it is, these folks, for some reason, found their way to hospitality and fell in love with it. And the really important thing about that is, and this is one of my favorite teach outs in the book that I tell people, what I've learned, one of the big things I learned in the book was the people who are incredibly successful in this industry aren't doing it for themselves per se. They love owning bars and restaurants because they love giving experiences to others. And I think we tell a story in the book where I call myself a dream killer, where I have, and this has happened more than on one occasion, but I do tell one particular story in the book where someone calls and says, hey, I want to own a whiskey and bourbon bar. And it's basically because they want to own a bar. They love bourbon and whiskey, and it's all about them and what they want to do, which is a singularly bad reason to open up a bar and restaurant if you listen to the people that are wildly successful at doing this. They love giving to others. Now, they get something out of that, but they love giving to others. So the business, they don't get that sort of mind rot out of owning a business, which leads them to what we call Indomitable Spirit, or the I, which is that grit, that tenacity that plows you through the tough times. There's going to be really tough times in this industry, whether it's something like COVID that we all had to get through, but just the day-to-day grind. This is a hard industry. And the people that not only survive it, but thrive in it, they live for it. They truly love this. So the HELIX points are that they're the accumulation of these reoccurring themes that really, really matter. And the folks who are award-winning have these 5 things in spades: humble nature, explorer's pursuit, lifetime experience, indomitable spirit, and extraordinary culture. Those are the 5 things that dominate the canvas when you talk to these folks. But look, it took us a while to get there, but after you do the 20th, the 30th interview, you're like, all right, here we go again. There it is. We had some spirited debates early on in the process before it was quite so obvious, and you're trying to figure it out. We had some really spirited debates because Dave and I process different, we learn different, which is why we collaborate so well. The common thread is we don't have a lot of ego in our work. Going back to the writing stuff, if Dave writes a terrible chapter, I'll be like, Dave, this is awful, and I've got to go clean this up. Or Or he'll say, Dave, look, man, this is incoherent. I got all this. And we go and we do that, and it's totally cool. So you have to have that in check if you're going to do a co-author type of thing. The reason Dave and I work as co-authors is we don't have a ton of ego. We want to, not unlike the bar and restaurant owners, I think we're passionate coaches. That's our fuel. I couldn't own a bar and restaurant, couldn't do it. I don't have that stuff in me, I can tell you that. But the kind of fuel that bar and restaurant owners get out of serving others, Dave and I get out of coaching people. And if all you're really concerned about in the end, if what matters the most is the people that read this book, and if it changes their lives, then I don't care how we get there.
If I can just add on just a tiny bit there, because there's two, you reminded me, Dave, of these two awesome moments. There was the two of the HELIX points. It's explorer's pursuit and humble nature. And those two were huge aha moments for us. One coming from Dave, one coming from me, where each one of us at different times through the process had this idea, and we called the other. And there was one of those like 2-hour, 3-hour conversations of, wait a minute, I think this is one of them. And here's why. Let me explain to you why. And we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until we were like, yeah, that's definitely it. They weren't obvious at all. And that's part of that. It was a really big moment for me to see this truly is a research investigatory process. And that happened quite a bit. But those two were really big realizations for us. Like, humble, they're humble people. Yeah, they are. And then we discussed, what does that mean? And because you see these huge personalities, these big, they look huge egos, you would think. But then you watch them give to their customers and give selflessly to their customers. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Those two things don't have to, they can exist in the same person and be there in great amounts, right? You can be the person on stage, you can be that big personality, but also be incredibly humble and have this ability and desire, innate need to give. The other thing, and that he reminded me of here is on the partnership side. He mentioned, we're co-authors and there's no ego. We're actually, and there's a whole chapter about partnerships in there that I loved writing. And when we wrote it, all the points that we saw in there that were necessary for partnerships to truly work at a high level, we realized we were exhibiting in the book. And as we were writing the book, and one of them being that need. And this is part where, again, as we co-wrote, I had my chapter written, and Dave goes, "You're missing an important concept in here, right? They have to have a healthy ego of competition, but they have to be able to put their ego aside." And that was another long conversation. And that's something we're able to do, but also the best partnerships we see are able to do. And I have one client in particular, and I'm not going to say their name because I don't know if the main owner wants people to know, but he's a real estate guy, and he wanted to own a bar. He wanted to own a whiskey bar. He wanted to be that guy. He found a partner who is one of the most impressive, quintessential hospitality people I've ever met, excels at getting a team together, creating a culture in the business, giving and providing hospitality, and with their partnership, they allow that to work. So it's the same thing, whether it's in a bar or in writing a book, those concepts allow you to accomplish amazing things. And whether you have those pieces, inside the book, whether you have that explorer's pursuit, the lifetime experience, or you need to get it from the outside.
Yeah. The humble nature side is an interesting one, right? Because I do, there are a lot of successful people who are not humble, right? Mm-hmm. So why do you guys think, or how does it impact, these operators? Or is that one of the more hospitality specific things you see, or is it kind of?
I want to start with something, and I want to pitch it to Dave, if that's cool. It's funny. You'll see 2 reviews of our book on Amazon, both of them talking about how this works outside of our industry. One is my Aunt Sue. She created the largest massage therapy school and practice in the Midwest, to my knowledge. It's called Kalamazoo Center for the Healing Arts. She's done this incredible work inside of that industry, but it's service. And she called me up before she wrote the review, and she said, "You know what? This is a book for anybody in service." So in terms of, does it apply to other industries? 100%. Highly successful people, anybody truly in a service industry, these things apply, and she's convinced 100%. The other one's my mom, of all people. She's a nurse. Same idea. She said, "Look, you can see if you go through and look at your doctor, the ones who have huge ego, maybe they're the greatest surgeon, but in terms of that personality, that need to serve people, or that ability to help you feel safe and feel like you have a doctor who's going to take care of you, all these things apply. That humble nature becomes critical in our industry. Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical to be an award winner. And again, you can look at somebody who looks, and I'm not going to name names because I don't want to offend anybody, but you can look at somebody and some of them who have this huge ego. They're on stage, they're out there, or we could say, Gordon Ramsay would be a fine example. You watch his shows, and it's like, wow, that guy's got an ego on him. But then you listen to him talk to people on an honest level when the act is gone, when he's not producing and he's not projecting that personality he needs to. That man's humble, and he gives authentically, extremely authentically, to the people that he's working with, to the people he's mentoring in those shows, and so on. So I think that anybody in service, yes, I think humble nature is very important, and it can coexist with ego, because it's a separate part of, it's a specific sliver of hospitality. Right? It's that ability, or that internal drive and desire to give selflessly, to put yourself aside, to be humble and say, okay, this isn't about me. This is about you, and enjoying what I've put in front of you, and enjoying the experience I'm creating for you. And then when it's time, because I'm stealing this straight from Nitzel, when it's time for them to be on stage, they deserve that, right? They're giving. So that moment when Julio Cabrera, for example, steps behind his bar and starts playing music and does a conga line through his business, and is up on stage singing with the band, man, that dude just gave the entire night long. So having that moment, I think, frankly, also is probably a good balance.
No, that was really good, Dave. Look, humble nature was I would say the last one we got to, and we wrestled with quite a bit. And to be honest with you, Ray, we got we got some real pushback on it. Hey, this person isn't humble. So if what I would add to what Dave just said is hubris is a business killer. Hubris and ego. And look, I did take my cue from Jim Collins, and you look at level 5 leadership, and on top of that is humility. Now, I wasn't writing to that end, but when Dave and I started having this conversation, and then that light went off, I said, Eureka, this is a leadership cue. So whether it's sports, whether it's business, whether it's family or friends, if your ego runs unchecked, or if you're full of hubris, your chances of success are pretty low. So what Dave and I had to figure out, and I hopefully we explain this well in the book, is that humble nature doesn't mean you're running around doing the aw shucks routine with your head down and no success is my fault. No, these folks, you can be proud. You should be proud of the fact that you're winning awards, proud of the fact that you are delivering incredible experiences, as long as that pride doesn't turn into hubris. And you can peacock a little bit. Look, am I super proud of this? Yes, I'm super proud of this. Even if the only person thinks that it's good is my mom, I'm super proud of this book. And that I should be, right? I put the work in, so I'm excited about that. But am I running around like an idiot telling everyone that it's the greatest book ever written? No, I'm not. I leave that to Dave. Dave does that.
That's my job.
He called me the other day and said, dude, this is the greatest book I've ever read. I also have written it.
I mean, as I was saying to you earlier, and you probably notice behind me, I have the most important books in my entire growth as a leader, a thought leader in the industry. Yeah. I've read every single one of these books. Every single one of them.
Yeah,
the bar shift actually should be back there just to break up the color a little bit, because it's pretty bland.
No, there's one copy right here. Right, I made sure.
Yeah, I thought
I do think, Ray, just to put a dot on it, that we did have to redefine a little bit the classic interpretation of what it means. Yeah. In the book, we say too, the willingness to listen. Yeah. So, hey, do I know everything? If I've reached a point in any version of my life, personal, business, whatever, where I know all the answers to every question, you're getting into that hubris area, especially when you are super successful and everyone's giving you all these validations, and you start to believe that you know all the answers, and you're not willing to listen to the young dishwasher who comes in and he has a better way of washing dishes. But look, that's not what we hired. Just you process dishes. That's a problem. And that's where you get into hubris. So if you have that willingness to stop and listen to people and and be willing to admit that you still have something to learn and it could come from anywhere, you're going to be A-okay. And that's what we saw out of these award winners were, they have ego, and that's okay. And they're proud of what they've done, and that's good. They're also incredibly willing to learn. And they were very forward about admitting their mistakes. Very, very forward about, hey, this is where I really blew it. These are the mistakes I made, and this is what I learned, and then this is how I grew. And I so love that. And that's kind of the end of it. That's where Dave and I started realizing, yeah, you know what? Yes, that is very common, more common than not. All these people experience some not all. Most of these people experience some really big failures.
Yep.
Most of them. And they came back better and stronger, which means you're a learner and you have the ability to course correct and improve. And that's where we landed on our concept of a humble nature.
And one last thought on that, just to a person, 100% of them said something to the effect of, I got here because of my team. I'm surrounded by great people. I have a lot of great people around me. Every single one of them. If you look at the list of people in the book and you think, I've met that person, I've seen that ego, understand that I tell you right now, they said something to the effect of, I wouldn't be here without the people around me. It's just every aspect of how you could define how they interact with the world and their businesses. There's that serious level of that humbleness there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I asked the question, but I totally agree. I mean, it's especially in this industry when you're managing and overseeing so many different layers of people, and it's certainly having humility and a lack of ego is certainly not a detriment in any shape or form, right? So yes, there's always going to be exceptions that some people will, who have massive egos and are still incredibly successful, and they might make up for it in other areas in terms of that they're incredibly talented at what they do, creative or whatnot, and so people, will kind of compensate for that. But certainly for most people who want to be really successful and good leaders and build a good team and strong team around them, then humility is a key part of that. So I totally agree with that being part of the overall common thread. I've got a couple more questions here before we close it up, but I wanted to just ask you guys quickly on anything throughout this whole process over the last 3 years, anything that kind of really surprised you massively? Like just, I mean, you're going to have a lot of small surprises, but anything stand out that you say, wow, that's something that I never considered or thought about, or this is kind of really challenged my own way of thinking, my own thought process. Did anything like that stand out for any of you guys?
For me, it was almost the entire experience. The willingness of people in this industry to participate in this is incredible. Look, I'll tell you, Ray, the trust that people put into us to do a reasonably good job at this. I asked myself, could I do that? So they got a call from someone around the world that they don't know that says, hey, could you spend a few hours with me telling me everything about your business and all the good and bad that came along with it and your secrets to success? And then, so that's one level of crazy. Then the second level of crazy trust is saying, like, I hope you do well with it. Like, I hope you represent me well. And that's what keeps me, like, if there's something that keeps me up at night around the book, it's the question of, did we do this justice? And to some extent, the answer is no. Like, Dave and I don't have the writing expertise to give these stories the full weight that I think that they deserve. Now, can we do a really good job and change people's lives with? Yes. But the idea that the amount of trust people put into us to do this, I don't even know. I'm at a bit of a loss for words of how in awe I am of that. And could I do that myself? I'm not even sure I can do what they did. I can do what I did, but I'm not even sure I can do what they did.
And I guess that's part of, like, again, back to sort of the DNA structure. It's part of them is what made them successful and made them good leaders and good business operators and win the awards was the giving back to the community, giving back and sharing what they've learned. So in some degree, it's not surprising because that's the type of people, you know, you have in the book, right? They are people who want to give back, and they'll probably say, hey, this is just what I've done, and this has just been my life. You know, I don't know if there's anything special about it, but from everybody else, from what they've achieved, they've got a huge amount of knowledge to give back to everybody else who's looking to achieve something similar. Yeah. So to me, I guess it does make sense that they would trust, you know. It helps that you've written a book before.
Yeah, it really is extraordinary, though. That's humbling for sure.
Yeah.
For you, Dave Domzalski, anything that you can spring to the top of your head?
No, mostly it was interesting. I found some of the revelations interesting, and I found writing it to be very interesting. I spent time intimately in the back end and the dirty underbelly of the industry, and got to know quite a few owners, as you do, when I was running bars in Baltimore. So I didn't find that open willingness to share and to trust surprising. Crazy, yeah. There's a bit of like, I mean, Jesus, we got some high profile people. We have Lil from Coyote Ugly. We've got the maestro Salvatore Calabrese. We got Julio Cabrera on the cover of GQ. These people have high profile images. They've got a brand they have to protect, and they're like, yeah, sure, yeah, you're good. Really interesting to me, actually. You know what? There was one thing that did surprise me. Angus Winchester. If you read the prologue, whatever you call it, the forward. Angus talks about how amazing the book is, this, that, and the other. Angus put to paper some really flattering, amazing things. He put an insane amount of trust in us to do that. Because if we don't do it, now he kind of looks dumb or like he has bad taste. That man, he takes a really high. It's very important to him, his sense of taste and style. So that was the one thing that surprised me, to be honest. That even now, I think back on it, every time I read it, I'm like, Jesus, this guy, like, either he knew we were going to be really good at it, or he just thought, man, you guys won't let me down.
Angus was a bit of an inspiration because I always wrote with a responsibility. Like, if you know Angus, Angus is a critical thinker, right? He's not an easy touch necessarily. So, you know, I thought there was a lot of weight, Ray, to writing this. So much responsibility in telling the stories well and taking care with people's, you know, some of the highlights and lowlights. Some of the stories in here are absolutely tragic. Those are, I can't tell you how hard it was hard doesn't even describe it. Impossible to write some of the stories we had to write in this book. I don't have the words for how difficult that was. And I still don't have the ability to write at the level of some of the tragedy that took place, but we gave it our damn best shot. So it's readable. It's definitely readable, but I wish to be honest, I wish I could have there's times where I really wished that I could write better than what I could, but I think we got there.
I think we did a great job. I disagree a little bit. Earlier you said, I don't know if we could have done, it's not as good as, I can't remember your words.
Humble nature there. Huh? That's your humble nature coming through there.
Right. Well, no, this is my peacocking, man. I think we did a great job with it. I think and that was I forgot to say it earlier. I said there were two things that we started with this book. That was the second one. We knew that we had to do these stories justice. And it was right at the beginning of the third year, we were like, holy shit, these stories aren't written well. This is bad. And we spent better part of 6 months, if not more, rewriting. And I think we did a phenomenal for two guys who aren't writers by trade. Could somebody else have done better? Sure. Could a professional writer? Of course, that's what they do for a living. But for our skill and level of ability, I think we did really good work. And the stories are what make the book compelling and interesting. I've had multiple people say to me, I couldn't put it down. It's fun. It's a fun read. It keeps you going. And I think that's where those come in. And I think if we did a bad job at writing the stories, we would never get that comment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, from my side, really, I had I'm thinking back, I think there was the two favorite stories that I remember reading was one, really enjoyed the Salvatore Calabrese story, which a guy that I'd heard so many times before, but didn't really know much about his background or very little about him, but knew he was one of the top guys in his field. I really enjoyed that story, and I really enjoyed your disaster story as well.
You would like that story, Ray. I didn't put the part with you and me in there.
Yeah, that's maybe it's the Irish in me, but I do like watching a ship sinking.
It was a train wreck.
And I had some more context as well, but I didn't really, I hadn't. You never shared with me that story of how how much of a train wreck it
was
turned out to be. So I enjoyed reading that story, and I thoroughly enjoyed the whole book. I thought you guys did a tremendous job. You should be doing a lot of peacocking. You should be very proud of what you guys have done and achieved, and to do it 2 books is an incredible feat, and it certainly deserves to be up there and getting number 1 on these lists, because I think it's the stories that haven't been told before. And look, stories are always the best way to educate people, right? Mm-hmm. It's those lessons that resonate. It's those lessons that will stick in people's minds afterwards, and make even a small shift in their daily routine. So you guys, did an amazing job.
It's on Kindle, it's in paperback, it's in hard copy, and there's an audiobook. It's on Audible as well. It's automatic. I prefer the hard copy. If you see it, we were blown away. I didn't know what to expect. It's no jacket, which I didn't know I would like so much. It's just got a nice heft to it, good feel. But all that's available on Amazon.
Okay, fantastic. Anything else you guys want to share? Well, I'll post your contact details if anybody wants to reach out to you, but it's basically your dave.nitzel@barmetrix.com and dave.domzalski@barmetrix.com as well. The guys have a website, which is, what's the website?
daveanddave.co. You can check us out there. And look, and if you do buy the book, please leave a favorable review. Even if you hate it, 5 stars is still great. Just like on front of the book, 5 stars are going.
If you really love the book, please take a snap on Instagram, chuck it on Twitter, share it on social media. Writing a book is expensive at this level, and we would really love to sell some copies.
That's a good reminder, because I've just finished reading the book. Now I feel I can give an honest review on Amazon. So expect a 5-star and a glowing review. Yours truly.
Ray, seriously, share this with your 6 followers on Instagram, please.
I'm up to 7 now.
Every follower counts.
Yeah, Instagram. No, my wife's been trying to get me on Instagram for a long time, and Facebook is as much as I can handle on any social media. But I will, just for you guys. I'll sign up for it. So, guys, thank you. That was awesome. Again, congratulations. I'm sure there's a 3rd book in you at some stage once you kind of reclaim your energy after 3 years of getting this out. I know the amount of work and effort that's been put into it, and the book is just rewards, I think, for all that effort. So we will highly recommend it to everybody. We'll push it out there.